So here we go. Welcome everyone. My name is Joe Malbert Narvaez. I use he and they pronouns. And I am so happy to be here today with this amazing panel of leaders from across the state of Alaska. And we are here to talk about women, femme, and intersectionality. So before we get started, I want to share a land acknowledgement. So the NAACP Greater Fairbanks Branch and the Natick Diversity and Action Center acknowledge that we are located in the unceded traditional lands of the Lower Tanana Dene people. We also honor the lands of the Dena'ina and the Atna people from where some of our panelists are joining us. We honor the continued fight for the rights of our Indigenous peoples, and we stand with them in solidarity and in action. And if you are interested in learning more about the lands, about whose lands you're currently occupying, you can visit the native-landproject.ca for more information. All right, well, welcome everyone to our third installment of the Racial Justice 101 series. As I mentioned earlier, we today are going to be talking about the intersection of femme identity and racial justice. And we have three amazing panelists that we're going to be here with you us today. And let me move something here. Perfect. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started with introducing our panelists. So our first panelist resides in Anchorage, Alaska. She is a prolific writer, highly educated in anthropology, English, creative writing, and forensic science. She's a Coast Guard veteran, a community organizer, a human rights advocate, and a force of nature. So please join me in welcoming MC Mahogany Magnetic. Thank you for being here, Mahogany.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. So our next panelist currently serves as the executive director of at Data for Indigenous Justice, as well as the gender justice and healing director for Native Movement. And she has served in many spaces as an advocate for Indigenous women, Indigenous sovereignty, climate justice, and Indigenous rights to health and well-being. She recently earned her PhD in Indigenous Studies. So please welcome Dr. Charlene Akpik-Apak. Yeah, Charlene, if you'd like to introduce yourself, feel free to do so.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining.
Everyone.
Uva Ikniga Evan Luklang, Uvanga Charlene Apak, Anupaxis Gaakvik, Isi Mahogany. Chinik Mugurunga, Sulina Chirvik Mugurunga, Akaga Sandra Baby Lu Apak, Savaktunga Native Movement Ni. So this is my son Evan Luklan, and my name is Charlene Apak. I go by Akpik, and my family's from Gullivan in White Mountain, Alaska, and I reside on Dena'ina territory here in Anchorage.
That's you and me right there.
Yeah, that's you and me. So anyone who usually knows me knows my son. So
yeah, welcome. Thank you. All right. And our third panelist is from Manassas, Alaska, and is part of the Yatna culture, stewards of the Copper River region. She has a BA from the University of Washington and an MAT from Johns Hopkins University. And she has served in various capacities across the state, and in 2017, she was recognized as one of Alaska's top 40 under 40. Please welcome Yadabe Evans.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Pretty good. Thank you for being here today.
Great to be here as well. I'm so excited tonight. I just wanted to also mention that I'm the daughter of Donna Galbraith from Antasta and Jeffrey Mann from Massachusetts, the daughter of Molly Galbraith from Antasta, Bansinides, and Suslodi, and Don Galbraith, the late Don Galbraith of Michigan. Thank you so much for having me tonight, and I'm looking forward to the conversation we're going to have.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. All right. Before we continue, let me remove the bell entering when people are coming in for our panelists. Perfect. There we go. I will figure how to make that happen in 1 second. All right. So I'll introduce myself as well. For those who have been in the previous racial justice events, you've probably seen me in some sort of capacity, but my name is Joe Malbert Narvaez. And I currently serve as a diversity and inclusion coordinator for the Diversity and Action Center. And I also work with the NAACP as the chair for the Community Coordination Committee. So I'm really happy to be here. And I'll be moderating this panel today. And mostly this is selfish because I just love meeting incredible people and having really thoughtful conversations. So I'm very excited. I hope that you're all excited as well. So before we continue, I just want to share just some technology overview. For those who have been already clicking around in your Zoom, you probably noticed that you're only able to chat with the panel, with the people who are assigned co-hosts. So you'll notice that there is one account that is titled Ask Questions Here. So please use this chat function and share any questions that you have for the panelists through this account. We will be filtering through those questions, and if they're relevant to any of the conversations that we're having at the moment, then I'll be able to ask those questions to the panelists. And if not, we do have a Q&A portion of our chat today at the end. And for any general information about the NAACP that you may have, please email us at the fairbanksnaacp@gmail.com or visit our website at fairbanksnaacp.org. Give me 1 second. All right, and then so everything that we do is community supported, and we do like to provide an RM for our panelists for sharing their time, their expertise as well. So if you'd like to donate to our efforts, these are 2 ways that you can do so. You can make a payable check to the NAACP using this address on the screen. And the second option is if you have a Venmo and you want to contribute that way, this is our username on the screen. And these funds will be used to provide honorariums for our speakers, trainers, and fund any administrative costs for the initiatives. So we really appreciate your support. And then and we want to thank all the resources and all the folks who are doing work across the state of Alaska to push forward change and push forward justice. So thank you to Native Movement for the work that you do, the Alaska Black Caucus, the Alaska Center, the Diversity Action Center, and the NAACP. All right, so I don't see ask questions here. Okay, I just fixed that. So you should all be able to see the ask questions here on the chat. Perfect. All right, well, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now. There we go. All right, so how about we get right to it? Okay, so the first question that we have for our panelists is that what does it mean? What do we mean when we say woman or femme or intersectionality? So I think for us, it's very important to make sure that our community has the language to talk about their experiences. But we also know that language is ever changing. Language is morphing, and sometimes language is not always used in the same way by different people. So when we say woman, what do we mean? And I'm gonna have Charlene be the first person. I'll go around for the other panelists as well to answer that question.
Sure. I'm so excited for this, and I'm so excited to learn from the other panelists. And also, just when we were doing a little bit of planning and checking, Joe and I should have just recorded our whole talk that day too, because we had a lot of good points there. But I'm glad you asked this question because we've been having this question in a lot of spaces of organizing and how we describe the work that we do. And so when you ask the question in the way that we often use it, and you'll see it come out of our work as a woman with an X, and then it's become a kind of a debated term recently. So again, I think this is a good learning space. But I'll start with the term for women with an X, just because it's kind of at the top of my brain. And we think about that term as femme identifying. And when we say that in the way that we use it, it is meant to be an inclusive term and representative of a spectrum of genders and not a linear spectrum. That's another part. Is like we often think of like the spectrum as this one end and one end. It's not a bookend, right? I kind of picture it more like an amoeba of many genders. And woman is, from my understanding and my usage, meant to include all femme identifying people. And I'm aware that one of the many points that's been kind of contested is that it's women and then plus trans women, and that they just mean one and one. And that isn't really, I don't think, the intention of it or my personal use of that word. So I'll stop there and let the others jump in whenever they find points to talk and share about. But yeah, I really, in short, I think of it as a spectrum of femme identifying people, which is really limitless.
Thank you. All right. Mahogany, would you like to answer the question?
Yeah, most definitely echoing what Charlene has just said. Dr. Charlene, my bad. Oh my God, don't worry. It's going to be Dr. Magnetic one day. And you're going to have to call me Dr. Magnetic. We're not playing around. But no, I like this idea, this word, Womxn, right? For a lot of reasons. Just as you said, it's a very inclusive term. The other thing that we're talking about here is language, changing our language. And the first time I saw the X being used was in speaking of Latino, Latina, right? And to make that cultural linguistic distinction of this inclusivity with the word, with the letter X. And so that's kind of like where, I first started hearing about the word from some of my Latinx sisters and brothers and stuff who started using that. And then eventually I started seeing Womxn. I really like it. It's like fun to look at. I think when I think as a writer in my writer mind, when I look at text as images and stuff, I really dig that. Then it also, it breaks away from this man, it breaks away from that. So I do like it. I think I use it as much as I can, but I probably could use it a lot more, and probably most likely will in the days to come. But yeah, but when I think about it all together, women who self-identify as women, as feminine, and I know that spectrum, that cyclical, that non-linear thing, it changes. It changes, and throughout people's lifetime. I think in the last like 10 years, almost 10 years since I've been bopping around here in Alaska, we have this emergence of gender fluidity taking, space in our conversations and stuff, right? And you see, this person, they present in this way today, and then they present in that way the next day. And it was like, well, okay, whatever, so I'm just going to accept you for who you are, as you present yourself to me, and what you want me to use as pronouns if need be. So I think it's a very it's a wonderful space that we're in. I think so, historically, that we can have these new definitions and arise and redefine. We're doing the work of defining ourselves versus others defining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I really like that last piece that you shared with making sure that we're giving people the opportunity to define themselves rather than imposing something upon them. Because that's it. We all just want to be seen in ways that we want to be represented. So thank you for sharing that. Yadebe, would you like to answer that question as well?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me again this evening. And I'm really honored. You'll probably see my kids pop in and out periodically. I have 4 sons, and dinner was started, and then I've asked my second oldest to finish it, and then there's 2 others that are hungry. So thank you so much. You know, honestly, like I've had to research this. I've had to think about the terminology, the written language of woman, understand femme, and think about it in relationship to myself and my own identity. And as a Native person who grew up, you know, in a multicultural home, I get that there's a lot of spectrum, as you were sharing, Charlene, and on a lot of different levels. And for me, it's almost like as I've grown older, I've struggled to articulate my culture because it's just is. And sometimes it's really challenging formulating words to feelings or things that may not be like of this world, you know. And so I guess for me personally, I think of myself more as a spirit. And so that's where I really think of how other people are as their spirit, and they live in this body. And we have, you know, cultural experiences, we have a background, family, friends, you know, all these things that affect who we are. And but at the core, like all of us are a spirit. And one of the things, one of the experiences that I've replicated over the years is talking with both children and elders and the full spectrum in between about what they look for in friends. And often, you know, we look for somebody who's trustworthy, somebody who's kind, somebody who wants to hang out, funny, a confident, you know, all these different things. And it doesn't matter the age, the gender, or where they come from. We're all looking for the same thing. And then because of the position I previously held, I tied it back to our Alaska Native values and shared that the values are just alike as what we have identified together as a group of what we look for in a human, in our best friends and our partners. And I think that's where we all have to come back to, is like that core part of who we are, the core being of who we are, and that we've been given this opportunity in this time and era to do what we can with who we can and uplift one another and encourage each other where we're at. And one of my favorite songs recently is No Judgment by Niall Horan. And the video is hilarious. The one I like, because there's two videos, is the one I particularly like is with the elders, and they're just all about having fun. So if you haven't checked that out yet, I definitely encourage you guys to.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective, to all of you for answering that question. And I think that when we talk about language and language usage, self-determination is very important, as Mahogany mentioned, and also understanding that, you know, we want to respect people and use the language that they feel comfortable being used. And so I actually had a pretty interesting conversation with somebody earlier this week about women with an X, and how while some folks may use this term to be more inclusive of all femme identifying folks, It may not necessarily be a term that all people choose to identify with. And I think it's important for us to understand that even if we choose to use this language, that we also allow people to say, this is not what I want to be referred as. This is not the term, like how I identify. This is how I identify, and this is how I want you to refer to me as. So it's all about respect. It's all about understanding that there are differences, and that's okay, and we should uplift and celebrate those differences. So thank you all. So another question that I have for you all.
Oh, Joe, can I add something to what
yeah,
you're
please do.
saying?
Please do.
Is that okay? I was like, do I raise my little emoji hand or?
No, just unmute yourself.
Okay. Yeah, it's not meant to label, right? It's I think that that's part of sometimes when there's debate over it is like there's an assumption of labeling. And then also the other point, someone says, you know, one of the points that's also made in this discussion is, well, then how come we don't use men with an X? And I was like, well, actually we do. So I know at least for Native movement, when we put out like men's gatherings, for example, we put men and men with an X as well, right? And we didn't actually know when the organizers and us were planning that, we were trying to express like within our little event description how that it was an inclusive space. And I was like, well, why don't we just use men with an X? Is that a thing? And we're like, well, it is now. Like we're gonna try it out. Again, to express the inclusiveness that we were trying to reach. And I also want to, I think Mahogany made a great point about the writing piece, because it has sparked so much conversation by using it in writing. And I think that that's been really valuable to keep learning and to have conversations around what we mean. You know, maybe not necessarily always to come to like an agreement, but at least having the conversation of raising that awareness.
Yeah, I think also like when you think about pronouns them, they, and their, right? It's plural, right? And that could be, and I know for me, like maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, it was like really difficult to incorporate them, they, and their in writing a story, whether it was fiction or nonfiction, right? Because here it is, this word is plural, yet you're only talking about one person. And it's really, really fascinating. But the more that I've used it craft-wise, the more I've used it and practice at it, the more skilled I've become at making sure it's where I need it, where I want it to be. But I also think like, and this is the anthropologist in me talking, right? Is the them, they, and their. It's like really, really cool, because like if we look outside the window and there's somebody like, 200 feet away, 200 yards away, he's like, oh, look at them over there. Well, what are they doing? Look at them, right? Because they're so far away. We don't have no idea what their gender is or isn't, right? So then we just go automatically to them, they, and their, and the conversation goes there. So I think, at least for me, it helps to like put everything that in that space, right? I'm just like, well, I don't know who they are. I'm not even gonna assume. And actually, I think it's a problem that I'm running into right now, currently, in one of my little conversations last week, this thread. People going off on one another, but making assumptions based on the name and a little profile picture that this is who this person is. And no, just because this person, you don't know their skin, you just like, boom, label, put this on them like that's who they are. And then in turn, these other people are doing the same thing. I was like, man, I don't think my friends really know who my friends are. Right. And understanding whoever my friends are, you cannot make no assumptions about their gender. You cannot make assumptions about their language origins, their ethnicity, or anything like that. And the more that we work to remove those ideas, those assumptions from our head, the easier I think it'll become for all of us. Because we're not just going to make an assumption that just because you got earrings on and you're cute that you're a woman. No, we're not going to. Just because you're funky don't mean you're a man. Right? You know what I'm saying? It just, we need to just like, really do the work of dismantling, or one of the words that I love to use nowadays is decolonizing our minds on what culture and ethnicity and race and gender is.
I made almost like the opposite mistake recently. I was talking with a friend about someone that we both mutually knew, and my default was using they, them. And then my friend was like, oh, do they go by they, them? And I was like, oh, no. I was like, I think they go by he, but I was like, now it's such a thing that it's like almost like flipped, where my default has become they, them because how I think. And then I was like, oh, hold on, no.
I don't know. I think it's just fair to say, like, I was in a situation a week or two ago where I was helping another veteran out, and I had to call the VA, and I was like, yeah, they, them, and this is what they need, right? Because like, it doesn't, it didn't really matter what the person, thing was. This veteran needs help. This person needs help, and so I don't know. It just naturally like came out there. And they need help bad. Like, why are you wasting your time? So
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. And I want to kind of like introduce this question that one of the audience members shared with us. And I want to direct this question to Yadabe. You mentioned earlier that you were, had to like research this. Like, it's not something that we necessarily like think about all the time. But one of the questions that one of our audience members posed is, what does femme mean? And I'm really curious to hear what you came across, what resulted from like your journey of self-exploration.
Thanks for asking that tough question.
Sorry about that.
Well, what I learned, and dinner's done, by the way, was that it is a term used for people that identify with more feminine characteristics. And I thought that was interesting because I always like think about, and it's such a freaking egotistical thing to do, of course, but I'm human, but I like think about myself and like, okay, well, how do I fit into this? How will I identify now? How am I femme? Am I included in this identification as femme? Would some people say I have more masculine characteristics? It's definitely interesting, cutting my hair after 23 years and having it long and then going like super short. And the reaction that I got was both from family and friends. They all questioned my sexual identity. And, I was like, well, let me just, inform you, and it's not for this, meeting or anything, but I just thought how interesting it was that based on my haircut and style, people assumed that perhaps I was exploring a new sexual identity or, whatever. And, to your point, Mahogany, people make a lot of assumptions by the outward appearances, and you can't necessarily judge that. There's, of course, the saying, you can't judge a book by its cover. And even listening to my voice, like I have a deeper than normal female voice, and you might question my, even physical characteristics or whatever. But it's like, really, to me, what is it of your business? Like, am I treating you kindly? Am I doing my job? Am I raising my children well? Am I being a good example? Like, those are the things that really you should be evaluating, not who I'd like to sleep with or like what I have but in my pants.
Absolutely. Thank you. 100%. And there is no one way to be anything. And I think that we absolutely, and you all three of you have mentioned how we need to start, unlearning what we think we know about gender, what we think we know about identity, and stop trying to like put people into simplified boxes and understand that we are all intersectional, we are all unique, and we all should uplift those differences and celebrate those differences. So I want to ask, I know what I would answer, but there's another question in the audience shared that I kind of want to pose to y'all. because to me it seemed easy at first, but at the same time, it isn't. Like, I feel like there's a lot of layers to this. So do you all feel that woman is interchangeable with them? And I'll pass it on to Charlene.
I see Mahogany, your face is twisting though when that question happens. So I don't know if I should be the first one to respond. Hold on, Glenn.
Yeah. Mahogany, if you want to respond, please do.
No, my face is twisted because I'm like, yeah, it's a twisted, it's just like, and no.
I agree.
And I think so because, like, you know, and how you say your name, Yatibe?
Yetibe?
Yetibe. Yeah, well, Yetibe was just saying. It's content of character, right? Character is where it's at. And so when we talk about feminine, you know, energies and you know, people, no, just cause you know what I'm saying, the shell looks good on the outside to you, you know, you like the shell, like the mahogany shell, but you really don't know about all the goodness that's inside, you know, and honestly, if you have to ask, you're not gonna taste any of this goodness anyway. So, and I say that to say that all of that stuff doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, this is a good question, but then no, it's not a good question. Like, you know, that's just like pointless. Like, what is that? Yeah, but that's what gets us more deeper into the weeds, right? On these conversations or whatever and stuff like this. Like, if you want to continue to overanalyze that and think about that a little too much, go ahead. By you know, by all means, you know, go ahead and do it. And please do due diligence and do a lot of research and time to figure out what that is for yourself to answer that question, because like that is not. That's not black and white. It's not cut and dry. Not by far, because it's, yeah, not by far.
You know, I just think of labels and how we've been labeled in so many different ways. We've been categorized, researched, put into data, Excel spreadsheets, you know, you name it. Other people have looked at it and reported on it. And it's like, why do we have to continue on with, you know, the labels? And how about we do something proactive as, you know, Indigenous peoples, for example, you know, Indigenous language revitalization is crucial right now. And we're discussing an English term, one word. And, you know, we have elders like two that are, you know, left in some of our languages. And, you know, I think about many Indigenous languages that I know of when we discuss about who we are as people, we're often referred to as the people. And we haven't got caught up in a whole lot of, you know, debate on much beyond that. I know in some cultures, and I'm being kind of ignorant as I say this, but in some cultures it's very, you know, feminine and masculine, and there are you know, terminology denotations for inanimate objects, but in the case of us here living in Alaska, like let's be proactive and work on things that, you know, we can definitely decolonize. And I think of the Gwich'in school, language immersion school, that Yvonne Peter and others have been starting, and kids are involved in, and they're learning the language, and parents get scolded if they speak anything but, you know, an Alaska Native language. You can't speak English anyway. So that's what I feel like is exciting. Those are the things that, like, I feel like we should put our energy towards, like those positive movements and directions, because there's a lot we can get tied up and wrapped up around and like dwell on and be like, I freaking am pissed still. They're not freaking recognizing me for who I am. And what the hell, like stupid language. Like, I want an X now because I'm pissed at these guys for thousands of years who have erased me and how I felt. Like, yes, I get it.
Reminded me of a friend I had in college, like, 20 years ago, right? And this person used to wear black all day, every day. It's the only color that they wore, right? And so one day, we got into a conversation and stuff about it, whatever. And they rationalized that, like, they were so blacker than black. Like, they just had to wear black all the day, all the time. And it's like, you don't push yourself into a corner, literally, figuratively, of darkness. You're so black that you can't do anything. You're so black you can't participate in Kwanzaa or Black History Month because it's only 28 days out of the month. So I'm just not gonna be a part of it at all. No, I'm not down with Kwanzaa because I'm Black American. I'm not African American. I'm like, yo, you're missing the point. Like, let's do the work. Let's do the work. But as I'm saying, some of these type of conversation, and now let's move on with our discussion to some more empowering things, because this is just like, boom, that cycle continues, and we just continue to talk about that stuff. And the work is what matters. What work is what matters.
Yes.
Start doing in Fairbanks. What we doing in Alaska to make lives better for everyone, not like pontificating. I don't know. Maybe that's a Saturday night by the fire. You know what I'm saying? A few beers, a few drinks, maybe.
I'd be down for that. So,
I feel like what Yadabe was, mentioning again is like it goes back to our indigenous worldviews of selves, and it was a whole self. And how many of our cultural identities, when you translate what it means, being an Inupiaq means being a real person. I think the Yupik say that too. And I think, so many groups say they're the real people, right? Or I'm the real, but I think that that's for a reason, because it goes back to it being more important about the characteristic of the soul, about being a living being, and all of the aspects of identity that make you whole, being a whole person, versus all of these ways that colonization has diced up our identities, and then thrown them at us to figure out who we are. So I do think I love what you're talking about, like decolonizing and going back to what we do know. And so many of our languages don't have gendered pronouns. Inupiaq doesn't. We don't have pronouns. That's why I use they. Although I identify on a more femme spectrum. So.
No, thank you so much. And I think that this conversation that we have so far leads really well into like our next topic that I wanted to discuss with you all about specific, and what you mentioned, Charlene, of the reason or the purpose for you using they. It's very interesting, and it ties really well to like what we were discussing earlier about assumptions. When people hear they assume that, oh, this person is queer or this person is non-binary. But there are so many reasons why we would use anything that I think it's very important for us to, again, unlearn what we think we know. And I want to bring this term intersectionality into the conversation about us being seen as whole people, and that we're not just one aspect of our identity. So I want to ask you all, like, when did you first learn about intersectionality and in what circumstances, and what does it mean to you? And I will start with Yadabe.
Yadabe got a mouthful of food.
Oh, sorry, I did not notice.
I need dinner.
Love being in the hot seat. Man, intersectionality. It's a big word. Honestly, like, that's one of those words I've heard over time, and I've broken it down. It's an intersection of different areas is how I view it. And now that it's used in the terminology or in the topic of femme identity, women, in our capacity here, it's, I think, a combination of different identities, and why why do we have to intersect them at all? Well, it could just be like, for me, like it's all parts of a puzzle. And I think it's all about perception and how you think of yourself. And, you know, I think it also has to do with a position that you're in, like even job, coming down to your job position. You're likely to develop different types of characteristics if you're a supervisor versus an employee. And then you may become more assertive or male like, or, you know, those, I guess, men with an X. And it's just, it's all interesting to me. It's like, I've done my darndest to make it through life by dispelling stereotypes, because there are so many surrounding my life. There have been, and it's really driven me to to reach different goals and milestones and break those stereotypes. But then as I've gotten older, it's been interesting to be like, okay, well, there's something I'm just gonna have to embrace this one. I'm gonna have to say, yes, I am a single Native woman. And I'm gonna have to be like, I'm the bomb single Native woman. You know what I mean? Because like, I can't believe some of these questions that single women who are, you know, running for office or applying for different positions are asked for, or like what they're up against when they first apply for things, when you're in a system or organization that doesn't value female leadership, let alone like leadership that is, you know, not of the Caucasian persuasion. Help me out.
All right. Well, I don't know. I would add on that. I don't know. Gosh, intersectionality has been a word I've known for a very long time. I don't remember when I first start hearing it. Probably definitely I started coming across it in the 90s, sometime late 90s. I know for sure. But other than so, it means that, because when we talk about our struggles as peoples, right? It's not just, we're not talking about just ethnicity and culture. We're also talking about class, you know, we're also talking about gender, we're also talking about sexuality, we're talking about religion, we're talking about all of these different things, these societies that people are like, boom, kicked and beat down for all the time. Where does it intersect, right? So, because like we spend a lot of time, like, man, you know what I'm saying? Like, boom, we gotta help the Black people out, but what about the women? We're not gonna help the women out. Like, no, they're gonna have to take their time or whatever. But what about the poor people? No, we don't give a thing about the poor people. We know we don't care about the poor people, right? But we're all like, boom, we all intersecting in these spaces and stuff. So it's hard to talk about, have a conversation about liberation struggle if you do not talk about intersectionality. Because like until we all win, none of us is winning. None of us is winning. It broke my heart last week, you know what I'm saying? 6 Asian women were murdered, right? And it was like silence for like hours until like the next day or whatever, people start speaking up on it, because they've gotten accustomed to this idea that race and racism in America is like black and white. No, there's so many other people involved in this game, and we all need to like speak on it and speak up about it. When we see injustice committed towards anyone, we need to speak up and out on it, right? And that's just the way it is. Personally, I embody intersectionality in so many ways. And it's just like in so many times where I don't want to accept my intersectionality, but I'm forced to. I'm forced to in 2017, when this white man out in the valley is gonna ask me if I'm a woman. And I was like, look, I got a dress on, I got lipsticks on, I had black lipstick on that day. And he says, well, I can't, he grabbed my face, actually twisting my head. I can't tell I can't tell your lipstick apart from your face because you're black, right? So right here in this very moment, I'm dealing with race, sexuality, and gender all in the same moment, right? Because like whether I want to ascribe to, you know, to intersectionality or not, other people will remind me. And as long as I've been here, I don't know what someone's gonna like. Gosh, okay, I don't cuss mahogany. I don't know when someone's gonna mess with me, right? I don't know if they're gonna mess with me because of my gender. I don't know if they're gonna mess with me because I'm race. I don't know if they're gonna mess with me just because I'm cool. That shit happens, that ish happens too, right? It does. And people be tripping for all sorts of reasons and things like this. But so when it comes to like, and that's personally, but like in a larger picture, intersectionality is about, you know, bringing all these things into place in a conversation at the same time. Because it's very difficult to talk about ethnicity and culture without talking about class, without talking about power, without talking about colonialism and decolonization, all that stuff. This is why these conversations go on so long, because there's so many aspects to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate what you said about using the word embodied too, because I think, you know, the term intersectionality I learned, you know, also a long time ago, and I really lift up Black feminists who led the scholarship around that, who I learned so much from. But I think one of the misleading things about intersectionality, we keep going like this, right? For our visuals is that like they intersect, but what I think one of the ideas around it, and that I think is reflected in maybe work that's siloed, is that they're they don't just intersect and pass each other, they're interlocking, they're connected. And as Mahogany is saying, is that we embody, you know, all of these aspects of being. And so, yeah, they cross, but they also kind of, you know, you don't get to be like, okay, I'm leaving that part of me over there and I'm gonna, you know, go to this other intersection. So I think that, you know, even still talking about the word that's been around for a long time in different feminist circles, you know, I think we have a lot of work to do. I was in an organizing space earlier this week and someone said to me, why do I have to do Black organizing over here and then I have to be a queer person over here? And, you know, so I think we do have a lot of work to do around intersectionality today.
Yeah, you don't have to, people don't have to decompartmentalize like that. I hope they don't, right? Because the most important thing I think for anyone is like be yourself 24/7, 365, whatever that means. So whatever space that you walk into, you taking all of you there every single time. And then like that's gonna gain this respect over time. But when you leave parts of yourself over here, over there, whatever, and it's like, what's really going on? That's probably what identity crisis maybe really follows that. It's like when you are spread out and you're not like, you know, centered. And I know that from my own personal experiences. And you know, after my first suicide attempt in 2011, I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be me no matter what. So I'm going to bring all of myself into the center and like let everything radiate from there. So, you know, you get a whole lot of things when you interact with, you know, mahogany. But and I just wish more people would do that. Like, there's no reason to have like 2 Facebook profiles. One so you can be freaky and nasty as much as you want to be, and the other one so you can be like a saint to your family. They know you grimy. You know what I mean? Just be you in every space that you walk into. It'd be much easier life.
Oh, absolutely. I really I value a question that we just got we got earlier in the chat, and I kind of think it's a really good place to introduce it, about how we all want to be our authentic self. We want to be seen in the way that we you know, that we wish to be represented. However, sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes the way that other people see us, especially or see people, especially women, evidenced by the violence against so many women. So the way that other people see the way that people see other people, regardless of how the individuals identify themselves, has very real impacts on their safety, their health. So in y'all's opinions, how do we change that? How can we start changing the way that and start promoting people to see us as the way that we want to be represented, while also leveraging safety?
I can reply because that was one of the things I was just thinking of as Mahogany was sharing. By shifting the narrative, by continuing to have these conversations and uplift the identities that we self-identify, and by honoring and respecting how people self-identify in every aspect, particularly around gender, because one of the reasons I am so passionate about this area is because it is a critical matter of safety in our society. And we know that, and we've lived it for way too long. And being able to unpack all of the Western ways that we have been imposed upon, but then again, going back to the part of the conversation where we can look to our cultures and our Indigenous values to put forward who we want to be and who we are, because it is a matter of safety, and we know that. And having these conversations, it really does matter, and having representation does matter, and creating spaces where people can show up as their full selves does matter, because it really is a matter of life and death so many times, sadly. Someone told me, they're like, why do you do gender studies? It's not like it actually makes a difference, and it doesn't do anything. I was like, hell yeah. Well, I was like, who are you? You have no idea what's happening in this world then, because I feel like, no matter, we all know, I think, many of us know what it's like to feel unsafe because of our gender, or because of we're people of color and all of these other things. So broadening the narrative around it and continuing to make space for these kinds of conversations, it really, to me, it matters a whole lot, so.
I'm really glad that we're discussing safety, because as a woman, I've been asked, over the years, not just as a woman, just as a person, like, what is your biggest fear? And my biggest fear, like on a dime, is of being raped. And whether that's like, generational trauma, historical trauma, epigenetics, I don't know, necessarily been violently raped, but the definition of rape is also a spectrum, and there have been times where it's definitely questioned, right? And so as a woman who has that biggest fear, I'm like, why the fuck would anybody want to be a fucking woman? Why would you want to feel that? Why would you, like, I struggle with that. And I think and so how I struggle with it is like by asserting myself, by being confident when I go into situations where I'm fearful. I change my appearance, I wear less makeup, I walk differently. I do a lot, but I also am like a feeler, and so I'm sensitive to other people's emotions and feelings. And so I also incorporate that sort of protective mannerism in the workplace, and like know that the color red, for example, is very much like saying caution, beware. And so I was very careful when I met with certain people not to wear red, because of the assumption already that I'm somebody to be feared, and it's only based off of my appearance, or the fact that I'm a confident woman, and the fact that I sit up straight and I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. An elephant's word is 100%. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, people just aren't used to women, I think, being strong and assertive and being freaking woman, and yet still being fearful. And so some of the most, strongest women I know have been raped. And it's just like, I think that's a huge problem in our society. I think, of course, you guys are probably all in the same, line of we've got to stop violence against women. I mean, how many missing and murdered Indigenous women are there now? And then talk about in Fairbanks, like how many Native people are missing right now? And how long has it taken for them to investigate some of those missing people as a homicide? What is going on? You better believe that situation would be different if it was not a person of color. Well, how many are there? 7? 7 missing people of color. Sorry.
Good.
I mean, I'll bring it back. Like, you know, personally, you know, working for a school district for a long time, I heard a lot of really troubling stories. You hear about the abuse, you hear about, you know, what happened previously, and then how it's affected the son, the oldest son, and how he's, you know, internalized it. And then, you know, it was heartbreaking. And so now, like, thank God I work for a cartoon. I can have fun and be creative, but like there's that whole reality, and there's no way, you know, I could ever let that passion go to help like our kids and our youth. But we've got to stop that violence. And I think that's like it all stems from like hate. Or are you gonna love or are you gonna hate?
Some
I
people
don't
don't
know.
know. What's that one game they have what's it? Kiss Mary Murder or something like that? Or Kiss Fuck Murder. Something some game people be playing, like what would you do, right? With this particular person. And I've come to the understanding in my own life that, I mean, up until like a few years ago, I mean, a lot of people have never even came close to meeting a transgender, non-binary, gender-conforming person, right? So, you know, back in 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, it was like, oh my gosh, it's such an anomaly, you know, walking around. I'm still an anomaly today. Because as I know it, and hopefully, you know, some people like transition and come out the closet in the last year or so, whatever. But I'm only one. There's only one, you know, of me that I know of. I know one other young person, but like I think they're still like in high school or something. But the only other like African American trans woman I knew left a couple years ago, and she was also a person that was like really out and about in the community, always out and about in the community. There's no hiding me. There's nothing that I can do, no matter I can like have like my entire face, hand, body covered, everything. But I still still will get harassed, and it doesn't matter, right? And it doesn't matter how subdued my clothing is or how loud my clothing is. It's still the same thing. But it's painful. What's painful for me is that every year, you know, during Transgender Day of Remembrance in November, you know, this list of like, you know, on average like 40 like people here in America, right? And it's hundreds of people across the world. But out of that list of 40 people in America on average of whatever, 35 of those are African American women, right? And that's across the nation being murdered, you know, and everything. And like here I am in Alaska, when I do the math, the statistics, whatever, every day for me is a very dangerous day to be alive. Am I fearful? No. I recognize that there's threats. Yes. Am I prepared for threats? Yeah, I practice Kung Fu, right? But that doesn't mean I practice Kung Fu in the sense that I'm ready to fight. It means like I have this mind state that when you know, if and when those things do happen to rise, I will survive. I will get through it one way or the other. So I'm not gonna walk my life and live my life of being in fear of what may and may not happen, or who may want to cause harm to me and who may not. Because they're saying some people, when they interact with me, meet me for the first time, it's a paradigm shift. They really don't know if they want to love me, hate me, fuck me, or murder me. They don't know. And that's, I can't remember it, but sometimes they say that like the rapists don't even know in their own mind what they want to do until they get you alone. Until they pulled you away or whatever. They haven't even made up in their mind what they want to do. Not sure. And then it goes whatever path it goes. So it's horrible. But we have to do the work of being vigilant in our surroundings, in places we go. We have to, partner up, go with friends, or let people know where we at and what we're doing. And I think, conversely, the more visible we are, saying that, I think that makes life more easier, right? Because we're talking about the marginalized, right? The marginalized, the people pushed astray, the people who are like on the corner and stuff. Well, you don't see them no more because they put them in, this nice big old Sullivan Arena for the last year or whatever. So now homelessness is not an issue in Anchorage. Why? Because you ain't seeing people of color on the streets. But you see all these new fresh white people on the street. It's so funny. You can tell they just got homeless on the street for the first time. Their clothes are all nice and crisp and clean and everything. They don't quite know how to hold their sign or walk around. You know what I'm saying? It's something to be said about that. But that conversation is not there because the people are not seen anymore. So you remove the problem. You don't see the problem. It's not a problem. It's not an issue. So, but visibility is really where it's at for us. The more visible we are as women, the more our voices are heard, seen, and felt, and our presence is felt, life should get easier. I think it has, and it will continue to get easier.
Thank you all so much for being so genuine and authentic and sharing your stories. Charlene, do you want to add anything to this before we move on?
No, I just think, the work to create safe space, like even in public and private and for our family members, that we don't, that we are having these conversations. I say this a lot, that one of the most powerful things people can do, because people are like, what can I do? What can I do? Well, be a safe person, be that person who has these conversations with your loved ones. I think people underestimate the impact that you can have in your small spheres. So I think that people can really do a lot more than they think, and it doesn't have to be something really grand or take a lot of money, but it can be creating safe space for people's truths.
Thank you all so much for sharing your perspectives. So tying this to kind of the action piece of all of this, like what does it mean to be a woman? And we're in a racial justice panel, so we were obviously going to talk about racial justice work. So how does being a woman or femme tie into racial justice? Like how does this need to be considered, or should it be considered? And I'll let you all decide who wants to answer that question first.
Yeah, I just want to lift up all the, all the women's shoulders I'm standing on, and that this work has long been led by women, and that we've faced so much trauma through colonization. And it's, I don't think anyone can deny that it's been Indigenous women who have carried us through and gotten us here, and that continue to be on the front lines in so many ways. And the strength of women continues through, but that doesn't mean that men and other gender identities don't have a place in this movement. And I think that we have a long ways to go in creating those spaces to ensure that all genders are a part of this, because part of our values is balance. And as an Indigenous woman, I'm getting kind of tired. But the other part about asking about women and these intersections, the other aspect is that in many of our cultures, it's the women who are creators, right? We're the ones that are life-giving forces, and there's a sacred feminine for a reason. And that's why so many of these harms, like sexual violence we're talking about, physical violence, all of the things that we were just sharing about, that's why that, you know, those things change a person their whole lives. And you can heal, but it doesn't mean you're ever the same. Your spirit is different. And that has got to stop, you know. And so when we talk about women in this work, you know, it's uplifting the women who got us here. It's uplifting women going forward. And it's also making sure that we're being inclusive and making space for all of the genders to be a part of the solution going forward.
Yeah, I'm with Charlene on that one. Definitely honor the women that have come before us, right? And I think, oh gosh, yeah, I think everyone knows that women have been ruling the world for a long time, and just don't like it, right? And because they don't like it, they've done things to strip power away from women. They've done things to dehumanize women. They continue to do stuff to, you know, keep us down in some respects. And I know, like, for me personally, like, if it wasn't for my mom, my grandmother, my auntie, my big mama, oh my goodness. I think about my big mama all the time. Every time I make a pot of gumbo, I write poetry because she taught me how to, you know, make gumbo. So I'm like working on this gumbo poetry book and everything. I don't have a title for it, but I mean, she lives with me, you know, her spirit, her energy is, you know, is always present in my life. And I think about my ancestors who were enslaved, you know, those Africans who jumped over the ship, who swallowed their tongue, and the ones who bowed their head. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, master. No, master. The ones who bow their head. A reason why I'm alive today, right? You know what I'm saying? Because if everyone was like a warrior class, maybe we've been all killed off. Who knows? We wouldn't be here now if it wasn't for the people who, like, sometimes be like, oh, you come down on they weak, you know what I'm saying? They meek, they this and this and that. You need to be strong. Like, no, you really don't. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes just, you know, boom, you know, putting your head down and getting on the grind, doing what it needs to, what you have to do for yourself and your family is everything. But when we move into a work of activism, I think it should definitely be at least on two levels. There is your community activism, right? Your community, what you do in the public and the people, but there's also that personal thing, right? And I learned this as, you know, when I was learning about block by block organizing. So, you know, it's one thing like, boom, we're gonna help the entire, you know, city. Yeah, but you also gotta help your block first, right? The people that you know. And where I live, I must say, I think quite a few people know, yeah, people know me in this building because people have come to visit me and just ask where this Wonder Woman live, and people point them to where I'm at, right? But I know the people in my building. I know my neighbors, right? And they know me. And I've been there to help and support them, like they've been there to help and support me in many ways. That is activism too on that micro level. You know what I'm saying? Helping your sister out, helping your friend, helping your brother, you know, that is activism. That is doing the work. You know what I mean? If, like, you know, such and such need to want to go to school or whatever, but, you know, they don't have money for lunch. Like, well, yo, here, I got 5 on it, right? That is still a form of activism. And I say that because, you know, I just want people to understand that it's not always this big thing where you're part of these big organizations, you're part of big movements and, you know, masses of things moving. That little work, you know what I'm saying, the day-to-day work, it matters, it counts. And those are the things that really do help, I think, change lives sometimes more than the larger scale things that we participate in. So being a woman as an activist, it's just, I don't know, it's just, I'm just an activist. I guess when I think of that, when I think of myself that way, but I've really been moving away from so much political activism. I just want to be an artist for a while. Oh my goodness, I'm tired of being Wonder Woman. tired of like putting out fires here and shit. Every time I think I'm like about to take a break, whatever, lay stretch out on the sofa, watch some Murder, She Wrote. It's like, Mahogany, help me, help me, help me. Oh my goodness. And then, you know, and I go and help the people. You know what I'm saying? They call me up like, Mahogany, I was just diagnosed with schizophrenia. I was just diagnosed with bipolar. My uncle got severe depression. What do I do? Like, fine. And I'm not one of those people that's gonna like, you know, here, take this 1-800 number and go call them. No, I'm your friend. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna just go post a 1-800 number for you to call, because obviously if a person's in a dark place, they need help. So I do my best to help, to be a sounding board, right? Not placing judgment, be a sounding board. So being there for the others, for the people that are around you in your daily life, it's, I mean, it don't get no more revolutionary than that, because most people don't give a fuck about others, right? Care less, you know, about these things. And I just did this wonderful choreo poem about compassion, and it ends with this scene where there's a person who's not compassionate at all, because we have our little cups get a capacity filter, you know, compassion levels, you know, it gets to be too much. Like, I don't have room anymore to really care about you. I want to, but gosh, I'm drowning here myself. So let me get my head above water, you know what I'm saying? And like, get a few breaths. Let me see what I can do to help you, you know? So those type of things.
Yeah, I really am feeling that. I feel like you guys are both on the same connection about, you know, balance, and we all have different parts. And I was, you know, thinking about what you were saying, Charlene, earlier about you're tired, right? And I feel yeah, like as a woman, a lot of women have been stepping up to the plate. And I feel like there's been an imbalance, and you can see it. You can see it in the workplace. And it's really, there should be a research study. Perhaps we could embark on that next. But, you know, I've been thinking a lot for the last couple of months about male and female, and kind of what they represent, both like physically and spiritually, and how it connects to the world and how it connects to the universe, and you know, all these different like huge things. And so as I was reflecting, it was coming to mind that male like kind of represents this physical side of life, and female represents the spiritual side of life. And if you think about like male, female, we as societies have been trained, and I would say Western societies have been trained that, you know, it's male versus female, good versus bad, strong versus weak, not emotional, emotional. And then I was thinking about a lot of the values that we have in, I guess, femme identity, and or in that world, in that frame of mind. And a lot of it is about climate change and the protection of our earth. And I thought about a friend of mine, Princess, who shared before that, you know, a lot of the violence that we're seeing happen to women is also happening to the earth, and is a correlation between the two, because we're one entity, whether or not we want to admit that, you know, across humanity, with the earth, you name it, we're one. And at least that's what I believe. And if we don't come to a balance, then we're going to hurt ourselves. And I was recently reading a book called Untamed, which I highly recommend. And she's talking about her daughter who finally learns about the devastation, you know, and of the polar bears, and the fact that they're on the potentially, you know, extinct list. And so this little girl's life just, it revolves around these polar bears, and what are we going to do about the polar bears, Mom? And then the mom is like, enough with the polar bears, and even generates a fake letter, an email saying like they fixed the polar bear solution by fixing the ozone layer, and all is well with the polar bears. But the daughter knew it was a fake story. She's like, Mom, come on. And then Mom was like, gosh, it's just the polar bears. Can we move on, kid? You know, kind of feeling. And then the daughter, before she drifts off to sleep, was like, Mom, it might be the polar bears now, but it's going to be us next. And so, dun, 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 like, little girl went to sleep. Mom was left with this thought, like, what about the polar?
Oh, I think we.
That's an awesome frame for her.
I
to-
know, right? So just about to cut
That
out.
is it's a good way. Power.
Way to go out.
Polar bears. You know,
Screenshot.
like,
Yeah. Yeah, man, I don't know if you realized, but you froze in this like incredible power pose. So very inspiring.
can you see me better now? Am I frozen still?
You're all good now.
Okay, good, good. I was like, I need to do a hot spot. Oh man,
Yeah,
but
I want to share something that one of our attendees shared, and it's a quote by Audre Lorde. It says, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence; it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare." I think it goes so well with like what you all have been sharing. Existence is resistance, especially in a world that is designed to, take so much away from you. So thank you all so much for sharing that. I wanted to ask you all, and Charlene, you mentioned earlier about how, this violence against women of color is not just, it's not a woman's or a woman of color's issue. How can non-femme, non-women folk be a part of this, of making sure that we are building a society that's safe for everybody? And it's like when we think about racism, sometimes we think that this is a Black issue, this is an Indigenous issue, but in reality, this is an us issue. This is everybody's issue. So how are we all going to work together to make sure that we are building this safe community?
Yeah, just how racism, right? It isn't the labor of people of color, and it isn't going to be, we can keep doing this and keep doing this, but it isn't going to change until white people start doing their own inner work and start talking to each other and start really, that we aren't going to end racism amongst people of color. That just isn't going to happen. And same thing with violence that's being perpetuated against women is not a women's issue, it's a men's issue. And we aren't, we can keep doing this and keep doing this and keep doing this, but until we start having these very real conversations about examining masculinity and men and their roles in society, then we aren't going to get anywhere, and I think it goes back to so many of the things we're talking about, that those spaces, Mahogany's talking about knowing the people around her and doing that inner work, keeping your own head above water, doing that internal work and being a real human being. So tying all these concepts that we've talked about together, so one of the things I'm learning in organizing, and I'm always learning, is gathering men, for example, is and looks very different than gathering women, because again, for many social reasons, maybe anthropological reasons could be talked about, it's okay in society for femme identifying, for women to be emotional, to talk, to share, to like kind of do that processing, right? And it is less accepted for men to do that, but men need it just as much, and creating those spaces again is so important. And the other thing I want to revisit was the term activism, right? Like that term, again, as an Indigenous person, what it really is just upholding our responsibility to one another. And we need all genders and all people to do that, no matter what your heritage, background is, your gender, is upholding our responsibility to one another. And so I think that helps answer this question about how you or men or whoever, I forget what the question was, could be involved or do something is, it's the same for everyone.
Yeah, I want to
Right.
add that to this. Like, white people do not have a monopoly on racism, right? And what is racism? And it is clear racism is a tool, it's a weapon anyone can pick up anytime they feel like it and use on someone else, right? And I'll tell you the best example I have of this in recent time was just over this summer. A sister of mine, she's African, well, she's Nigerian American, right? Um, right, but she's got beautiful black skin. And she's out with her auntie who also has some beautiful black skin. They get into it, right? Auntie calls the police sounding like some white lady over the phone or whatever, because she knows if she call the police or whatever sound like a white lady, they'll go rush there, right? We all know, like, if the police show up, who knows what will make done? They could easily in your life. But this person knew like what this thing does. And people have used racism as a tool. Anyone can pick it up at any single time, right? And then just like, and then you have, there's so much that goes on, but we don't hear about it, right? Because we constantly hear about what the oppressive language is about and what they're doing. But there is just as much like racism that goes on between us people of color about one another. Like, oh my goodness, I'm like, I don't stand for it when I'm hitting, kicking with some black people and they want to start talking about Chinese people. Like, what the hell? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just not gonna work with me. It's not gonna fly with me. So because like we all have these, we can pick up this racism acts anytime we want and chop someone else down with it. It's a tool, and it's a very dangerous tool. But not one group owns the history on it, the monopoly on racism. And we look at history and we study antiquity, when there was times when European people were not in power and other people still went around the world just dominating, committing all types of acts of genocide against other people, wiping out entire groups of people based on their ethnicity, based on their language, based on their culture. And white people are nowhere around to be involved. That's real shit that goes down. And when we really start getting into these conversations about what racism really is, and we can really start to root it out then or whatever, when we get to the heart of the problem, it's not necessarily what the issue is, but what really this thing is about. It's an illness, it's a sickness, there's no vaccination for it or anything like this. Anybody, any given time can be just as racist they want to be with the next person. In my novel, The Mad Fantastic 2098, has a very racist black woman as a central character. Oh my gosh, she's such a hot mess. But but she does like superhero stuff at the same time, but she also does a bunch of racist shit at the same time too. And I put that there, and it's very intentional. And I'm gonna start talking about this. But another thing that like I love bringing up this conversation especially amongst African American people, right? When we start talking about Rachel Dolezal, the lady back in 2015 who was president of the NAACP chapter and all this kind of stuff. It's like, oh, but she's white, right? But when they talked to her, interviewed her, this is how she says she identifies as African inside. And at the time, I remember I said, man, I had to spend all day defending my gender, defending my identity with people, just telling them, like, look, just because my body on the outside says one thing, has nothing to do with my spirit on the inside. So I was like, well, maybe there's something to what this lady is saying after all, right? Maybe she really is, who she says she is. But who am I to say that she isn't, And so it's like, we have to constantly like challenge ourselves, question ourselves, dig deep to answer these questions for ourselves, and then to pose those questions to our families, to our community and nation. But yeah, we've got to really like start talking about racism and be, outside of that spectrum and get it where it belongs, I think. But also understanding intersectionality of it, right? Because you can't you can't take away like this conversation is like, but last week, week before last, was this man, was he racist or was he misogynistic? It was all of that. And it can't be unwind. It can't be untangled at all. It was all of that at play, right? So yeah, it's kind of like you got to know what each element does by in and of itself and how they work. It's like having a dual diagnosis. you know, for mental illness and stuff. Like, okay, alcoholism is substance abuse is a problem, but it's also there's this mania here that like leads to inhibitions of behavior and everything. So they compound, and you throw a little PTSD, anxiety on top of that. Oh my gosh, what a cocktail you have there, you know?
Yeah. Yadabe, would you like to share your thoughts? Oh, I can re-ask the question if you need me to.
Yeah, thanks. I was like, please.
Yeah, so we were talking about like how can we include non-femme, non-women folks to participate in this discussion, and also like how do we all as a society take ownership of the issues that are of the society, and not just put the work on people who are experiencing this oppression or doing the work already and trying to stand up and defending themselves and advocating for themselves. How can we be involved in that?
Well, I think it just goes to everybody, you know, across the board. When you want to create safe places for conversation, is just be kind and, you know, be open, willing to take, I feel like feedback, and then even ask the hard questions and like not be scared, because I feel like as an Indigenous person, as a person of color, as a woman, there are a lot of opportunities to be scared and fearful in different life situations. And then we have to like prove ourselves and, you know, work harder, stronger, longer, whatever the case may be. And then, you know, even when it comes to like talking on the phone, like Mahogany mentioned, you know, to get a police to help changing the voice, you know, but I feel like everybody can be more open to the conversation, and then including people for us to like be open with our own experiences within, you know, maybe circles that could be potentially challenging, you know, perhaps that we haven't had conversations with. Many of us are, you know, part of different organizations or groups, and it could be something as an agenda topic or item that, you know, you bring into the workplace. We talk about sexual harassment and, you know, bullying in the workplace and everything else. And it's right. It's an agenda topic. And so if we were strategic about it, I think that could be one strategy. For me, you know, as a mom of 4 sons, I see a lot of what society has imposed upon their frame of minds, you know, into their perceptions. And so if we as, you know, people, even as we're in small conversations, one-on-one conversations, if as we notice, you know, terms like you're such a girl, or you do that such a girl, or, you know, just putting down in general, like just like stopping it and explaining why. And I mean, I do it with my kids all the time because there's plenty of teaching moments. But I mean, even explaining to the term savage to one of my older sons, I was like, okay, now we're in a society that is saying savage is cool, like you're a badass, you know, there's a song out right now, whatever. And so is the N word in a lot of songs. And yet I'm not going to call anybody the N word, and I'm not going to call myself a savage or anybody else a savage, whether it's cool or hip right now. I know the historical context behind it. And so I think as moving forward, you know, even the small things in language, you know, we can change that, since language is where we started off, you know, and it's all about conversation. And I think doing it in a way that's like loving and not like accusatory, and maybe like, you know, asking them questions to explain their perspective. Like, for, you know, if somebody's like, Well, I'll give you a real example. I had a friend who had moved up from California, and she was like, we were out to lunch, and she was wondering where all the Native people were, successful natives were, because I was like the only one she saw working, and her only other like perspective was seeing people, downtown that had been drinking. And so I was like, okay, my armpits are sweating and I feel like throwing glass.
Another power pose.
That's another good one, man. She's good anytime, any motion she's at. Like,
I know. Always photo ready.
always photo ready.
That's hilarious. Am I back now?
Yeah, you're back. But
Okay.
it was another good freeze moment, though. You look great.
That's funny. So now my kids are here, and they're using the internet. But I was just saying, like, taking those opportunities where I could be really pissed and like destroy an opportunity to change somebody's mind, but making it not about me and how I feel and not taking it personally, but being like, okay, thankfully you said something, so you feel safe enough with me to ask that. That's kind of scary a little bit, but at least she felt safe. And then I could address it, and discuss about how we're at work, just like everybody else. And yet this is our land. These are where our people are from. We're comfortable outside. And, after, some people might have come to town and things don't necessarily work, the way they hope for, and they're tired of getting yelled at and kicked out by mean aunties like me. They go down to where nobody's going to yell at them, and I tried to like make light of it, in a way like that, but also explain a little bit about our culture and at the same time. But it's all about conversation and relationships in my mind.
I love that you brought up parenting sons. You all met my son's son. And I think that that's also cannot be underscored enough. And then talking about, having these conversations, one of the best approaches that I think is really helpful is really, like you're saying, ask them these important questions that make them have to rethink and backtrack their logic. When they meet someone that makes them uncomfortable, a trans person or whoever, a person of color, whatever, what about yourself that makes you so uncomfortable to meet this person who is being their full authentic self? What is it about you that, hold up that mirror to them, and ask those questions, and they're like, what? And put it back, because it isn't about that person that is, nothing about them being their full selves. It really is about the person who is struggling to understand. And so being able to ask those really good questions that kind of lifts the mirror, and has them examine their own identity, and why they're so uncomfortable with others.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Charlene, because I don't know. I consider myself, I don't know, I would say an open book, but there's some pages that, now some chapters you won't be able to read. I don't know, but yeah, for the most part, I'm open book. At least a lot of the chapters in the book are open. But I say that to say that if anyone out there like has questions about gender, race, whatever, like, yo, Mahogany, how you get to be so cool? I would gladly tell you. You know what I'm saying? I would gladly tell you, how that works each day, because it's just important, like a part of in liberation struggle, right, is being aware that there are people who don't know, who are just like learning these things for the first time and don't know how to do how to. So I'm patient. So whatever you want to know, please, feel free to ask me. I think I was in a conversation last night or the day before, when it comes to gender, right? Because like a lot of people don't want to talk about their body parts when asked, like, how does it work? How do you have a daughter? Like, what? right? Because, and then I just kind of find out, especially like in those first couple of years in my transition, I'm like, there are some people who don't understand basic biology. Basic biology. There are women who've never seen their own vaginas. There are men who think, they pee and ejaculations comes out of different spots, right? That's just the realness of it. And these are grown people, right? Who have no clue about, their bodies and the way our bodies work. And so I'm like, yeah, whatever you want to know, I'll tell you whatever's on your nasty little mind or whatever, and help you understand, right? And then if it goes down, this is how it goes down. Then this and this and that. And because I found like that helps people, meet them where they're at. It does me no good to, throw out words, gender non-conforming, when people are still stuck on she, he males and that kind of stuff or whatever. Like, okay, yeah, you're hurting me here, but yeah, we'll deal with this. Let's talk about it. Because like, I guess, I don't know, at least for me, I can tell when someone is genuinely asking me a question versus them being patronizing or them being, mischievous in their approach to me or whatever. So I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever you want to know, let's talk about it, right? So I feel that is one way that I can help and extend, and I can't, because I'm saying I can't say that is something that everyone should do, because not everyone is not like that. Not everyone is willing to talk about some of those private things that go on with their bodies or in their lives. But some things I don't mind. That's one. I don't mind talking about mental illness and how it's affected my life and my experiences and stuff, and sharing that with people, because so many people can't speak on these issues for a plethora of reasons. So yeah, I can't say that everyone should do that, because everyone's not going to do that. I'm just saying you can come and talk to me, but maintain 6 feet of distance, because if you get too close up on me, before pandemic, during and after pandemic, I might kick you. You know what I'm saying? I might shank you if I got a knife on me too, or whatever, or run you over in my car if you get too close to my car. It's all the same. It's still personal space. So it's like, if you're going to approach me, do so diligently. I will definitely answer, but don't be blindsiding me. So don't be just like rushing up on me and stuff like this, because you're like in my space now. I'm like, okay, I don't know, is this fight or flight mode? What are we supposed to do right now? Okay. So, but I'm willing and I'm open to speaking with people and helping. I just finished a project. I don't know, I guess some people consider it controversial in the writing world, but this person, wrote a book, and they wanted to know, was it culturally insensitive? I was like, so you're gonna pay me to tell you if you're racist or not? Sure, I can do that for sure. Go ahead. I said, give me your money, And I was like, well, this should be pretty easy. All I have to do is put in the document, do keyword searches. Did they ever say nigger? Okay, cool, check, right? Just look for all the bad words right off the top. That rules some things out. Then look to see what they do with these characters. Are they stereotyping them or whatever? Like, you're good. But this person was nowhere close to being racist in anything they were doing, because they just have good characters all together, period. They were all flat characters. So, but I'm willing to extend that. Other people were like, no, Mo, don't do that. That's like, they should know on their own if they're racist or not. But no, they don't. No, people don't know, because we grew up in our little bubbles, our little towns, and our places, and our own experiences and stuff or whatever. And we don't know sometimes what we're saying that causes harm to other people. We just heard this term used our entire life. Just like when I run into some older white people and they call me colored. I'm like, okay, I know, I get it. You was born 100 years ago. That was the lingo back then. I get it. I'm gonna forgive you, because I know in your heart you don't mean that. This is the only word you know. Okay.
Well, there you have it. Racism 101 night turned to sex ed 101 night.
It's all intersectional. So looking at the time, I do want to make sure that we talk a little bit about representation, and give you all the opportunity to share who are the role models who have helped you become whole, who have helped you along your journey, who serve as inspiration. And we can also talk about, like, why is it important to have these role models and representation? Anybody who wants to go first, I won't point fingers.
Well, for me, I would say my mom and my grandmother on my maternal side, huge role models, and good and bad. I appreciate, everything that I've learned from both of them and their lives. The resiliency and determination that they've shown, and making it like despite the odds, in both of their lives, and their own generation and time. And I'm very grateful for also just a lot of the women, I feel like, in our community now. I didn't know how incredible of a community we had until I needed help. And it was hard for me to ask for help because usually the helper and I need, I had lost everything, and people that barely knew me, women that barely knew me, stepped in and were giving, more than enough to feed my family and I, to cover the bills. And it was just a phenomenal feeling of love and warmth and just gratitude to everybody, like, now. So I know we always say, like, those that have came before us and our ancestors, our elders, but like some of the people in this Zoom meeting, the lives that you're leading, it's on a daily basis. Like, you look over and you're shining bright, and that's what keeps me going. Because it's so hard sometimes, and sometimes you can't always like make sense of the noise in your mind, speaking of mental health. And you can't always hear grandma or creator. And so it's wonderful to have people like you guys that are part of, today, and doing the good work and the healing work. And I think about our kids in school, and what it was like when we were younger, and there weren't very many good role models. I remember one of my main jobs as a young person was always being sent home with, auntie who had too many beers that night, or whatever, grandma, and learning some very valuable skills. And you can learn a lot from all of that. But I just want to say thank you to each of you, and for your own resiliency and making it through this pandemic. Your own personal lives continue to carry on. I know March is a really tough time for many of us here in Alaska, and we're going through a big transition. A friend of mine recently said that, as we're entering into the season of Aries, the sun is shining on all the stuff that the previous moon covered up. And, I think sometimes it's hard to deal with what was covered, because it could be messy. You don't know how to organize it. But once you look at it and you're able to deal with it, you can move past it. And I feel like many of us are stepping into a new journey in life, and it is amazing to see so many new beginnings for many of you. And I'm including myself in that. So thanks for being my role models.
Thank you for sharing. Charlene.
Sure. I think like Yadabe come from a large family of women who are leading, and just in sheer number, it's funny, like the my mom had 9 kids and 6 of us are girls. So I mean, like really women led here. But starting to turn, you know, this next generation, I have like 14 nephews and like 3 nieces or something like that. So, you know, a lot of amazing women in my family. And a lot of chosen sisters, as Yadabe is describing from the community, right? I think I especially also feel that gift. I moved home in 2016 after being outside of state for a while, and that community of chosen sisters has been unbelievable. And I know I also couldn't have made it through coming home and leaving a violent relationship and all the things that I've also grown through in the last 5 years or so, has been with incredible help of our community. And then most of all, you know, my biggest inspiration, who I learned from the most out of my whole life, is my son. I've never learned more than being a mom. Holy smoke. That's been quite, you can hear me. Yeah, I'm getting my jammies on. Anyhow, he is a shining light that I continue to I always learn a lot from. He is a wise soul. So yeah.
Thank you.
When it comes to my role models, I don't know, it's a little difficult for me. It's not difficult, it's just different types of role models, right? My mother and family, women in my family have been role models in terms of just life itself. But I think still to this day, in terms of on both sides of my family, my mother's side and my father's side, I'm like the only like activist in the family. So yeah, there's none of that. I got that from my family. Like, yeah, we hear you, Mo. Whatever. I mean, they just came around like last summer. It's like all that stuff you've been saying the last 20 years, Mahogany, we get it now. They killed George Floyd. It's like, yeah, I'm trying to tell you police brutality is an issue, you know? But so I haven't had many in terms of that. I've had the support, the love, carry on, you know, to do, you know, continue to do the work. I'm proud of you, those type of things. But culturally and revolutionary, I've had Mama Manira. She was like one of my first mentors when I was in high school. I was here in East Anchorage, and she was helping me like get all my little college thing and stuff together. She helped me with my first name change before I was Mahogany. Just cultural things. I think she taught me how to make bean pie, a bunch of other stuff, right? Then there was Mama Maria, who I met here Juneteenth of like 95 or whatever, and she told me about the National Black United Front. So when I got to Houston, you know, in my early, you know, 20s, and I was a part of the national, the chapter there and a national organization and stuff there. But then I said that probably the most influential of them all had to be is Mama Akuye still to this day, and I haven't talked to her in a while. I hope she's doing well. But she, like, you know, brought me into the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And then that is when I met and got to spend time with, and she calls him my ideological grandfather, Kwame Ture, formerly Stokely Carmichael. And if any of you all read anything about history, the term Black Power, he coined that term in like 67, 69. He was a part of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, voter registration drive. Then he went on to like throughout the 60s and 70s with the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. And then he like left, you know, America and went to Africa, was fighting in Guinea-Bissau and these other countries with Africans against European imperialism and stuff around the world. And I got to spend like 3 days with him when I was like 21. I brought him to Houston. I think it's 97. He passed away in 98. And it was just life-changing, game-changing experience for me. And every time when someone asks me, this question come up about role models, I always revert back to Kwame Ture, because he said, you know, no matter what, you have to have full faith in the people, right? And he said, like, and one of the things he used to say too, and every nigga that's an African, right? In every bad person, there is good, right? There's good in everyone. And have faith in knowing that there's good in everyone. And when it's time to do the work, go do the work. Have faith that the people who needs to be there, who will be there, will show up, and will stand with you. But it just taught me a lot. He also taught me that there's no compromising with the enemy, right? And when I say the enemy or whatever, just no compromise. There's no selling out whatsoever, because a lot of times, young activists, like, oh man, it's like, I get paid to be an activist? Oh, sure, they throw you all kinds of money. Then you got your apartment, then you got your car, then you got this and you got this and whatever. You got all these things to take care of now. So no, you don't have time to be at the rally anymore because you got bills to pay, right? But that is a way of subverting our movements time and time again. You pay the people, pay them well. They think they're doing good. They think they're living a good life or whatever. Yeah, but they've just been like neutralized as activists in the community. And like, no, I'm sorry, I can't show up to the protest. I got to work. I really need a job, whatever. But they wouldn't have said that like 6 months ago. But when you get all those things, they get the claws into you, like boom. So me, I decided back in 2018 that I'm a free agent activist. I'm not a part of any organizations and stuff like this. I've had to get into long debates with Mama Kuye about this idea that you need to be a part of an organization, an inner organization and stuff. And I've only learned that I don't have to be, because I've been forced to be that way since I've been here in Alaska. I've been forced to stand on my own, because up until like last year, until like 2019 and 2020, I always having to fight these battles on my own, because like, yeah, it's cool. No one cares when a Black trans woman goes down and something happens to her or whatever. So I have to stand and fight on my own. Although I'm going to fight and just stand with other people. When shit happens with me, like, no, you're on your own. And so I've been like mistreated by so many different organizations and people in this town or whatever. So I am kind of bitter when it comes to some things. But I also have learned that I'm just as effective as an organizer, as a community activist, standing alone. It also allows me the space to be this intersectional person and work with different groups and stuff, because not everybody wants to work together. Just because this person, your friend, they're not going to be friends with this group. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it sucks, but what can I say? I can't get the queer people to the Black Business Expo, to help the homeless people out, the homeless people, to help So anyways, I stand alone, but I feel really bad about going against that knowledge, that wealth of information that she's taught me. But I've seen in my own time, my own experience, like sometimes we do have to stand alone, So other than that, yeah, Wonder Woman is definitely my greatest like role model by far. I think it's early as I can remember, since I was 8 years old, seeing Wonder Woman, and the more I've studied Wonder Woman, know that it's not a person. It's a title. It's an honor to carry. You know what I'm saying? Not everyone can be a Wonder Woman. I get it now. Lord knows I get it. And I'm gonna stop telling people you're a Wonder Woman too, because you may not be. This is a whole nother level of work. Anyways, I digress.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for sharing your perspective, your experiences. I am incredibly humbled and incredibly inspired by the work that you all do, and this conversation has just let me really re-energized, and I really hope that the community feels the same way. Just looking at the time, we've kind of reached our time together. But so again, I want to thank you all for saying yes to our invitation and for being willing to work with the community and help us keep pushing towards true inclusive and truly supportive community. And for everybody who's in the audience, thank you so much. I apologize if we didn't get to your question. This will be recorded as well. Please feel free to email us at fairbanksnaacp@gmail.com. But before we go, I do want to share this form right here. If you have any feedback or anything that you'd like to let us know, any thoughts, any ideas, or any lingering questions, feel free to submit this through this form. There's a QR code that you can use your phone to scan if you're on your computer. Also, you can go to bit.ly / racial justice 101-feedback. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to get you involved. And you can also email us at the Fairbanks NAACP at gmail.com or visit our website at fairbanksnaacp.org. A lot of links, I apologize. But to MC Mahogany Magnetic, to Charlene Apak, and to Yadabe Evans, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your experiences. And have a great rest of your night. And thank you, everybody.
Hoyana, thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
You gotta get out of here. I'm done. I'm out. I want my mama back. I feel you.
If I gotta go to sleep, I have